if I could start asking Paul to speak. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Well, there's very different messages, I think, for Britain and for the poorest countries that I usually focus upon. For Britain, I don't think the British population has actually woken up yet to the enormity of the economic mess that we got into. And it's been obscured by the fact that Gordon Brown seems to be in denial. I have to say, I have no party political allegiance. I've never voted Conservative in my life, having said that, but it seems to me only one issue for the election, which is to hold Gordon Brown's economic incompetence to account. We are Greece without the comfort blanket of the Eurozone. In fact, our fiscal deficit is bigger than Greece. Now that is really catastrophic. Yes. Obviously, we're a bigger economy than Greece, but as a percentage of GDP, it's even bigger. And we don't have any comfort blanket. Now, how do we get out of it? And I think the debate between the political parties has been hopelessly confused and dysfunctional. It's focused on how fast do we bring that deficit down. And to my mind, that's not the heart of the issue. The fiscal deficit means that we're piling up debt, liabilities. It seems to me inevitable that we go on piling up liabilities at a mesmerizing rate, faster than we've ever done it. And it probably isn't a good idea to bring that to get back to a sensible fiscal deficit very fast. If we do that, we do risk deflating the economy. And so the key issues are not actually about liabilities. Very sadly, due to extraordinary economic incompetence, we will be piling up economic liabilities for the next 4 to 5 years. All the important issues are therefore on the other side of the balance sheet, which is the assets. And so all the discussion on the fiscal deficit is just focused on this one side of the balance sheet, liabilities. Now, think about it. Given that we've got to pile up liabilities, there's really no choice about that for the next 3 or 4 years. What really matters is how we spend that money. Do we spend it, as we have been doing, on consumption? Or do we spend it on assets? We don't have to deteriorate the balance sheet just because we're building up liabilities, as long as we also build up assets. Now, to do that, what we would need to do is have a major shift in the composition of public expenditure. We would have to cut the recurrent expenditure, and not just for this year, but we have to cut the things which kind of commitments that come for consumption way into the future. And that basically means entitlements, benefits. That a responsible government would now announce cuts in benefits. They raise the retirement age. Well, it's obvious you start with civil servants. The idea that civil servants have unfunded pensions that start at 60 is just ludicrous. Probably some retired civil servants in this room. Well done. So we have sharp cuts in benefits, which would mean that not only would we reduce consumption spending now, we have to reduce it for those years in the future. We take the political pain of that decision now. That's what a responsible government would do. And then we switch to spending on proper investment. In everything. To give you an example of what we could spend You know, France has got a higher ratio of debt to GDP than Britain. Not a higher fiscal deficit, a much smaller fiscal deficit, but a higher, somewhat higher fiscal debt to GDP. They won't have soon, they'll overtake it. But they've got something for that. Anybody who's travelled in France knows that their transport infrastructure is massively better. If I could swap the French debt to GDP for the French transport system, that's debt, that's liabilities well incurred because you acquire assets which are productivity. So just to conclude, I've got two nightmares. It's called one conservative nightmare. They come in, they commit themselves to getting the fiscal deficit down fast. And then they lack the political courage to cut the things that the consumption side, which is where all the political costs are, cutting benefits. And so what they slash is capital expenditures. So we lower the liabilities by lowering the assets. The balance sheet stays completely messed. Yeah? So that's conservative nightmare. Labour nightmare is that we get a prudent Mr. Brown back in office, and he says, oh, don't need to do anything because, first of all, if we cut any spending, that will cause a recession. And anyway, what we're spending on is investment. Anybody who's fool enough to believe that deserves Brown for another 5 years. Right? Now, in the next round, I want to talk not about Britain, but about developing countries, which is a very different agenda, but a very important one.